Sheila never knew who was leading her into the deep woods. Neither did she know what awaited her was something more deadly than she could have ever imagined. Are you ready for the unexpected? From crazy men on dating sites to strange waiters on high school reunions, these disturbing horror stories are sure to send chills down your spine. Stay tuned, because things are going to become sinister. I had been texting back and forth with Adam ever since we matched on Bumble a month ago. I looked at him as my best friend rather than a potential boyfriend, so I shared everything with him, from what I ate to my deepest feelings. I lost my mom pretty early in life, and my dad married my new mom, a gentle woman who was always sweet and polite, but never quite felt like family. They decided not to have any other children because they thought I would feel left out. But despite that, I still felt entirely alone. I had no friends. So meeting a new friend on Bumble made me feel like my life had changed for the better. Sometimes, when I felt low, Adam would send gifts to my home, immediately lifting my mood. I really appreciated him. I remember that day vividly. My parents had to leave for a week. Before they left, we had breakfast together, and Dad told one of his silly jokes that always made me roll my eyes but secretly laugh. I hugged them both, and it felt like we were all closer than usual for a moment. Since I was already 18, I strictly said I didn't want any babysitters. They finally agreed, though I could see a trace of worry in their eyes. The silence felt heavier than I had expected as the door shut behind them. I talked to Adam about it, and he promised to keep me company through the phone while my parents were away. At first, the delight of being home alone kicked in. I blasted the TV, ate food on the couch, didn't clean up, and lived life on my literal terms. It felt free and exciting, but soon, the thrill of being home alone began to wear off. By the time the sun set, so did my energy. The big, empty house seemed quieter than usual, and I started to feel the weight of being truly alone. I texted Adam about feeling bored and lonely. In less than 5 minutes, there was a knock on my door. I was surprised to find the pizza delivery in my name. "Who is this from?" I asked the delivery boy, but he stood there mutely. There was no restaurant name on the box or anything, so it was indeed quite perplexing. Just then, my phone buzzed. "You like your surprise?" Adam asked. A smile appeared on my face, and I walked to my bedroom, utterly unbothered about locking the door. I sat on my bed watching a movie and munching on the pizza. I felt completely full just by eating 2 pieces. I must have slept up to that because I suddenly woke up at midnight at the sound of utensils clashing in the kitchen. I ran downstairs to check, and indeed, all utensils from the cabinet were on the ground. I had no clue how that happened. Before I could think of anything, I heard a loud breathing noise. I remained still, trying to apprehend where the sound was coming from. Turning on the lights, I began to follow the sound. As I reached the last cabinet, the breathing sounds escalated. So, I promptly opened the cabinet door. To my dismay, a man sporting a black mask was hiding inside. I screamed loudly and ran towards my room in great panic. I could hear the footsteps following me. As I hid underneath the bed, I could see a man's foot striding in the direction of my room, desperately searching for me. Terror mounted with every step that the man took. I gradually took out my phone and began to text Adam, but as I texted him, I could hear the notification buzzing nearby. My worst nightmare had come true. I was sure that the intruder inside my house was none other than Adam. Besides, he was also the only person who knew that I was home alone. Without wasting any time, I called 911. Adam was still in the room, so I couldn't speak loudly. I whispered help and hung up the phone. Within a matter of a few minutes, the undercover cops surrounded my house. Shortly, Adam was under police custody. As the investigation began, new details began to emerge. Adam wasn't 19 years old, but rather was a 42-year-old bachelor living next to my house. Apart from that, he had a long history of rape, attempts to murder, and kidnapping. He had actually been hiding from the police in my neighbor's house for the past few months, where he had been observing my moves, likes, and dislikes. Later, Adam, whose real name was Anthony, stated that he was actually planning to rape and murder me that night. Since that day, I have neither used any dating site nor intended to ever use one. I will never forget this incident. At that time, I was pregnant with my first child, and my boyfriend and I had recently broken up. So I was going through a rough patch in my life. Thankfully, my aunt offered to take care of me during my pregnancy. She wasn't in the best phase of her life either, but she was an incredibly kind woman. Honestly, she was the only family I had left after my parents' passing. I never wanted to burden anyone, but I agreed to stay with her as my due date approached. My aunt, who was around 60 years old, suffered from severe arthritis, which worsened during rainy days. It happened to be the monsoon season, and I had a routine checkup at the doctor's. I just recently moved into her apartment, and it was my first time navigating it on my own. After my checkup and the hospital visit, I returned to the apartment. This time was around 8 p.m. There was heavy traffic and I didn't have a car. I relied on public transport. I still had to walk for another 15 minutes after the ride to reach the apartment, which was located in an old part of town. When I finally reached the apartment, I noticed that the elevator wasn't working. I cursed my luck and began to take the stairs. Our flat was on the 8th floor of the 10-story apartment. I had never taken the stairs before. Upon reaching the 8th floor, I saw that there was a big no-entry board above the stairs leading to the 9th floor and above. My curiosity heightened, and I decided to take a look. As I reached the end of the corridor, I noticed a single room on that floor, and its door was wide open. I cautiously walked inside, where the lingering scent of fresh paint still hung in the air. The room held only one piece of furniture in the center, a baby crib. Suddenly, I heard a shuffling sound. I became alert and looked around the room. That's when I saw her. A tall woman with broad white ghoulish eyes, pallid burnt skin, and 2 holes where her nose should be. Our eyes locked, and she looked at me with an uncanny smile that seemed to stretch towards her ears. She then raised her hand and pointed her finger to my belly, then in a hoarse voice uttered, "Give me your baby." My heart raced in my chest, and I tried to run out the door, but as soon as I tried to run, I slipped and fell. Soon after I fell, I felt a tight grip on my leg as I desperately tried to reach for the door. Hearing my scream, my aunt and other neighbors rushed towards me. Just as they arrived, the grip on my leg loosened, and I managed to get up trembling. By the time they found me, I was already out of the room, shaken and struggling to catch my breath. After hearing the horrifying incident, we all decided to go back and check the room. But to my horror, it looked nothing like what I had just seen. I had no rational explanation for what had occurred to me, but the blue bruise on my leg was indeed undeniable proof that it was not my imagination. Night after night, I got the same haunting dream where I would walk to the 9th floor, only to be confronted by the same lady asking for my baby. The terror of this reoccurring nightmare left me in a state of constant fear and unease. It became increasingly unbearable to live there. Upon finally giving birth, I made the decision to move to a new place, leaving behind the disturbing memories that I had no possible answer to. If you like these stories, then like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more scary stuff. This has to be the creepiest thing to ever happen to me, hands down. This happened to me right after high school. My close friends had organized a get-together at an old cafe that we often went to during college. It was an all-you-can-eat cafe at an absurdly cheap price. Since that cafe was located in an unpopular spot, it was almost empty every single time. Another perk was it was about a 20-minute walk from my home, too. My friends and I were so frequent to the cafe that it sort of became our routine during school. We even recognized the people who worked there. None of us really had conversations with any of them, but we knew their faces well enough to identify them even outside. There was this one guy who worked there who didn't have regular shifts, but would show up twice or thrice a week. He was very weird. I'm unsure how to describe him exactly, but he had a long, creepy face. His eyes were huge, and his body language always freaked me out. He would stare at our group from the kitchen. I hated the look on his face when I would catch him gazing at us. He would stretch his mouth to the point it seemed like a natural gash on his face. The creepy guy was working the shift by himself that night of the reunion. The time must have been around 8 p.m. Since it was our reunion, our parents didn't mind us coming home a little late. It was my turn to get the bill, so I proceeded to the counter with my mom's credit card. I asked the guy for the bill, but he kept staring at me, so with a hint of anger, I rudely demanded the bill. He quickly looked down and printed out the bill. I tried not to make eye contact, but I unknowingly looked into his eyes as I handed him the credit card. I still remember that guy's face. He stretched his mouth into a grin like he just had a crazy idea pop into his mind. After getting the bill, I walked to the table and told my girls how creepy the guy was. They all agreed and decided to return home. A minute later, I began to walk down the narrow street towards my home through the shortcut route. That was when I felt someone was following me. For a few minutes, I thought I was just being paranoid and overthinking, but then I noticed a tall black silhouette about a few meters away. I turned behind one more time, and I couldn't shake off the figure's strange resemblance to the guy from the cafe. I was sure that the guy was up to something crazy, so I promptly took my phone out of my pocket and dialed up my mom. Fortunately, she picked up and told me that she would meet me halfway. I agreed and kept walking as fast as I could. Soon, my parents found me. I ran to hug them as tight as I could. I had never been that scared in my entire life. I'm sure the guy saw my parents because he didn't show up again. However, Dad was ballistic and informed the police. A day later, we got a call from the police department. They told us that despite doing an extensive search of the pathway, they couldn't find anything besides CCTV footage that seemed to show a guy following me. However, that evidence was too small to get him arrested. But another red flag was that the guy had been out of contact since the incident. Nevertheless, he never really got arrested, and nobody knows his whereabouts. I'm just thankful that nothing happened to me that night. When Sheila, was around 8 or 9 years old, my family moved to a new house near the woods. We moved during winter vacation, and I still had about 2 months to enroll in a new school. That evening, Mom was in the kitchen cooking, Dad was at work, and I was sitting by the window looking outside the woods. Just then, I saw a little girl who seemed to be the same age as me. She didn't smile or speak, but gestured for me to come outside. I was just a little girl myself, and didn't think anything, but just followed her outside. I kept walking behind her without speaking anything or even questioning where we were going. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang behind me. I stopped and turned behind. That was when it hit me. I was in the middle of a forest. "Where are we going?" I asked, turning my head, but I realized I was there on my own. The girl that I had followed was no longer there. My throat went dry from fear and my body began to shiver tremendously. "Mom! Mom!" I screamed, running around trying to find my way back home. But it was already quite dark, and I couldn't comprehend the pathway to my home. Just as I was about to give up hope, I heard some men shouting my name. I screamed with every bit of energy I had left. It turned out to be my parents with a group of policemen. My parents were furious and scolded me for leaving the home alone. But when I told them I followed a little girl into the woods, the police became serious, thinking there might be another girl to rescue. I went back home and didn't think much about it afterward. However, years later, during Thanksgiving, when I was around 20, my mom recalled the incident. She said that night after we got home, the police spent the entire night searching the woods. They found the girl I followed, but sadly, she wasn't alive. Worse, they uncovered the bodies of 15 girls, all about 9 years old, buried in the same area where they had found me. The police later linked the remains to the disappearance of girls from an orphanage about 3 kilometers from the woods. That orphanage had been shut down after the girls went missing. You can only imagine how terrified I was when I found out how close I'd been to something so unspeakably dark. These stories show how uncertainty follows our every step. Curiosity killed the cats, and it is ready to curse those who tread carelessly into the world of danger. Are you ready to dive deeper into darkness? Then like and subscribe to the channel for more creepy stuff. See you soon. Thanks for watching.